Hey guys, Vengeful Parrot here from Two True Reviews, and today we're continuing our look at Ryse, Son of Rome. This is part 2 of a 3-part review that I'm putting up for this, so if you haven't already, I do recommend you go watch the first episode. That is where I covered the good parts of the game, which were primarily the soundtrack and the storyline. Today, I'm focusing on the cons, the bad parts of the game, which are primarily going to be the controls and the combat. Now, the combat is bad for a few different reasons. I'll get into that a little bit more later on, both today and tomorrow. Now, the controls were only bad because they were just so incredibly different from anything else I've ever played. This game does have a huge learning curve, so you're going to have to be patient with it. You're not just going to be able to pick it up and be instantly good. Now, part of the confusion for the combat came from the UI, so I'm going to do a full overview of the UI. Here's the main menu. We got Campaign, and we have Gladiator, and then we have the last section, which is Hero. This is where you'll find your skill upgrades menu and executions, that big box right there in the middle of the screen. More on that later. Gladiator is your multiplayer menu. You'll start your matches and customize your character from here. And the campaign is fairly obvious. Now, as you can see here, there are 8 different levels, which does make the game rather short, but it is honestly worth a second playthrough if you're into very story-driven games. Here are the difficulties. Centurion is the hardest one available when you first start the game. Legendary becomes unlocked after beating it the first time. Now, Legendary, again, would be worth playing if you like story, but it is very, very brutal. Now, I'm going to be looking at the skills menu here, and this is where confusion with the UI kind of didn't help the combat at all. Because there's skill upgrades and executions. Skill upgrades is where I assumed all of the possible upgrades that you can buy would be available. You can see that there's health, focus, gain, and combat. Health and focus I'll get into a little bit more tomorrow because those play into the multiplayer a little bit. But the gain is how quickly you gain experience and focus, and the combat is your how many projectiles you can carry, and basically a critical damage bonus that you get when performing combos. Now, the executions part of the combat is basically any time you enter slow-mo, that's when you're in execution mode, basically, and your enemy will change colors, either blue or yellow, and the 2 colors correspond to the buttons on your controller. X is blue, yellow is Y, obviously. Now, this is all well and good, but I didn't realize until about halfway through the game that you could get new executions by going into that big executions box. I never really went in there because I didn't think to, because I thought maybe it was just telling you about them or like telling you how to activate the different executions. But once I found out, I did, buy or unlock new executions. But even though I did that, I still seem to only see like the same 4 or 5, which is unfortunate. Now, I want to tell you about the collectibles in the game real quick, and that's right here. You have 3 different types of collectibles. There's scrolls, vistas, and chronicles. The vistas are going to be shield-like objects that you will find throughout the levels. Scrolls are often found on dead bodies, and chronicles are going to be basically satchels filled with scrolls, oddly enough. All of these objects will have kind of a greenish glow to them, so keep an eye out. Now, right here I did want to show you this fight. This is basically the first boss character, and you'll notice that after I do what the tutorial tells me to and dodge his first attack, I basically do the same attack pattern over and over and over and over and over. I do sword, sword, shield, sword, sword, shield, so X, X, Y, X, X, Y. And then once he gets the skull above him, I hit right trigger, enter execution mode, press a couple buttons, and he's dead. Obviously, that gets very boring, especially when it works on about 90% of the enemies in the game, which it does. But I'll go more into that tomorrow when I start talking about the multiplayer and give you my final verdict. Stay tuned, guys.